I was probably about, I think, 20 years old when I awakened to the idea of injustice, the understanding of injustice. I was a missionary working in Cass Corridor with mostly African American people, feeding homeless folks, and then working with kids in the housing projects. And I was sitting across the table from this grandmother in the housing projects who was raising her grandkids, real meager means. I'm not sure how, she was going to put food on the table that night. And I walked out of there and got in the car that they had given me and drove to the suburbs that they were putting me up at in a really nice house and had my little, expenditure to pop anywhere I wanted to buy anything I wanted to eat that night. And I was like, wait a minute, this woman has just expressed to me an understanding and a love for God that is beyond my comprehension. And yet I get these things that she doesn't. And I started to then explore and understand and awaken to the fact that injustice existed in the world and that was counter to my values. See this little path over here? I was way over here, right? Wakening up to this idea. And I then started to look around and I heard voices and I heard joyous laughter and I heard challenging rage and protest and riot and I heard loving invitations and conversations that mattered. And I wondered where that came from. And so I followed it through this pretty little forest, through the path that I had to carve a little bit and had been carved for me before. And I walked in and I saw there was this whole fairgrounds of people that were communing with each other, that there were people in these different tents, in the justice tent. There were people that were grabbing onto that arc of history and yanking it further toward justice. There were people in the equity tent who were asking the questions of who owns this space? Who owns what we're eating? Where is the ownership in our society? And is it equitable? And then I walked over here to this diversity, tent, and it was a wonder. All of these different people and all of these same people all communing together, celebrating, dancing, sharing, exchanging. But I found out I wasn't allowed to go into that tent unless I went through the justice and equity, so that I understood that the difference in our society is also tied to an imbalance in the resources we can access, in the representation of ourselves in media and in politics, in the safety for our bodies. And so I wasn't allowed into that tent until I went through those other pieces and then got to this beautiful tent of inclusion where the practices were integrated and we were more likely creating inclusive spaces and then sharing with each other when we weren't, and being able to learn, which just sent us again through these tents, which kept popping me back to my entry point every time. There's this beautiful spiral dance. So I invite you to see this work as the fairgrounds that you can enter, that you're probably a part of. And I want you to dance in these tents with me and with other folks as we create a more just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive world, starting with ourselves, starting with our artistic practices, and then taking it to our creative communities and then to our cultural institutions.
And now to our storytelling prompt. Just as a reminder, as you can see on the slide, Uncle Jojo's potion recipe. Step 1, tell a significant story from your past, something that's meaningful to you. We're going to put up on the screen 4 different prompts that you could use. Since we did 4 days of potion making, we figured we would give you 4 options this summer to tell a story from one of these prompts and then make a potion. Don't think too hard about these prompts. Just grab the first one where a memory really pops into your head, a really visceral memory, and go ahead and pursue this, follow it down this line, and if you want to come back and tell another story and go through the process again, you're more than welcome to. Before we go back to those prompts and I read them to you, I just want to share with you a few storytelling tips. These were given to us by our story catcher, Marquez Ryan, as taught to them by Baba John O'Neill of SNCC's Free Southern Theater and Junebug Productions. SNCC stands for the Southern Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Storytellers should take us into an experience, take us to one specific moment in time. The more embodied this story, leaning on one or more senses, the better. The yellows and browns of the kitchen decor, the bitter taste of lies pouring from my mouth, the feel of the warm dishwater soaking my blouse. Stories are not statements. Meaning making is a team sport, so let's leave the preaching to the preachers and conclusions to our audience. And finally, be brave and wise. Tell a story that causes you to think twice about sharing, but make sure that the telling of this story is safe for you now and in the foreseeable future. If you're still in the midst of living this story, if you just came through it, this may not be the best story to tell at this moment. Use your best judgment. So we hope that you'll quickly take one of these prompts, gather your thoughts, and then go to the website on the screen, johnnystacks.com, to record your story. There's a place where you can go in, put your name, record it. We will not share your story without your permission. We may discuss the themes of your story along with other stories submitted as we present at the Iowa Arts Summit, but we will not identify the story with you without your permission. So, the prompts. First, tell a story of a moment in time when you personally experienced either privilege or oppression based on your body. That's the justice prompt. The equity prompt. Tell a story of a moment in time when you added on to someone else's experience of oppression or privilege without realizing you were doing so at the time. The diversity prompt. Tell a story of a moment in time when you saw someone's actions cause someone else to feel like an outsider for something different about their body and you did nothing. And finally, the inclusion prompt. Tell a story of a moment in time when someone intentionally acted in a way that increased your access, well-being, and sense of belonging. So we hope that you'll choose one of those and go to our website. If you want to share the story publicly, you can hashtag using the hashtags on this slide. Otherwise, we hope that you will just go and record your story and then come back for the rest of the process.